But the reason why I accept the invitation of MICU is simple. I would like to convince researcher, perhaps young researcher and graduate student, to work more on the context of child with the Q method, because I discovered that even a young child can work with the Q sort, visual Q sort for sure, but they were able to establish their preference, and it's very surprising. And I guess we can learn lots to work with the children and the Q method across the future, to discover, even for psychology, discover something we don't know at all until now. Because subjectivity of the children looked like what? It's a complex issue. And especially somebody working in developmental psychology, I guess I will be able to learn something to other guy like me and girl to see, look, and with another view on the children. And the Q method permit that. And it was very surprising what I discovered across the recent experience. So it's not an easy task to establish this link between child development and Q method, because we don't work with statement, we have to work with visual stimuli, and it's very complex to select stimulus that's go with your objective of your study. So the next slide, my dear. Okay, it's just rapidly how I develop an interest for the Q method with the experience. So very shortly, as say Mike, I start in the 80s to work on the daycare center with my director of thesis at that time, F.F. Strayer, who died. He came from Seattle. He died 10 years ago. We observe children in many daycare center. I was in observation context all the day. And during the night, my wife was not very happy with me. I go to see the children at home and to see the same children in two different contexts. And at that moment, I start to use the attachment Q set developed by Everett Waters. Was more quantitative evaluation. You need, after observation, I complete the attachment Q sort. I will talk about that later on. And after I go to primary school to use sociometry evaluation, I don't know if you know, sociometry is a way to establish the structure of the group, the relationship within the group. And I use this technique for many years, and also make interview with the parents, the children, and the teacher for sure. And after I move to for a short period of time to a student in college, because I discovered the instrument of Jack Block and Jane Block about the child rearing practice. It was quite interesting because the college of students, I asked them, define your parents across the Q sort. It was so interesting. I was very stimulated by that. And since 10 years, I found another field with the Mira Foundation. It's curious. We seem far from the children, but that's not the case. This time, The Mira Foundation create this, they train dog, their own dog, over 100 per year. They start 40 years ago to train dog for blind people, blind adults. And after they adopt little change for a dog for handicapped people, physical handicap. And finally, 10, 12 years ago, because there's some study was published on dog can play a major role for children with autism disorder. So I start to work with family and their children, autistic children. It was so fantastic. And I discovered another world. And but children was not able to fill out any Q sort. But so I started to evaluate the children at home and with my student, who was fantastic too. And after a while, I tell to the director of the Mira Foundation, come on, his surname is Eric. I said, Eric, yeah, but which dog you send at home? Because I go, I visit some family and all the dogs are not similar. I said, why don't try to develop tools? I said, I have the solution. So I make interview with the trainers that gave me trait that described the dog. And they gave me near 200 traits. We'll select 4 that you see later on and start to use, ask to the trainer with this initial Q sort to describe me the ideal dog. And after, I asked the family 6 months after they get the dog to describe how behave the dog at home in reference to the trait. And to see, I visit family many times to see what's the impact of the dog on the children. The children seem less nervous. It was marvelous. I filmed that, some of these interactions. So it just gave you an idea of what bring me to the Q method gradually across the years. And after I discovered in Amsterdam, the guy like Mike, like Stevens, they learned me much more than what I know until this moment. And it was so hope I contribute modestly to stimulate other researchers, because I'm now too old, the lack of resources to get new project, but the younger can change. It's one perspective on the Q method. That's the only contribution I can bring to my colleague, for sure. Next, my dear. Okay, let's see child development. That's my, okay, next. I just put photos. I like photos. People who are important in psychology and in developmental psychology. For sure, Stevenson is the center, but he know what he's talking about. I would like to know him 20 years before to discuss children, and Freud, for many reasons, is important too, because he influenced the development of the attachment relationship, you see later on. Erikson, for sure, developmental psychology was center. in John Bowlby, in reference to Freud, he's died, but he bring a tremendous contribution. And for sure, in psychology, Jean Piaget, he was developed theory around the cognitive development of the children, and he's an important guy. And Brunswick, that has covered since with this network, and Cantor for sure. And the last one is Vygosky, a Russian guy. He's centered on the effect of culture on the social development of the children. He was disagree with Piaget, but it was funny to read both because it's opened my mind to this issue. Next, my dear, that's the main problem in working with young children. I would just read it. Child development refers to the sequence of physical, language, thought, and especially emotional change that occur in the child from birth to the beginning of adulthood. The expert in developmental psychology often differed in their view of child development in different stages. That's Piaget advanced that at 6 years old, from born to 6 years old, it's important to the different stage of development. Next is an example, an illustration of the idea of continuity, discontinuity in development. How do change gradually or without abrupt change? That's continuity, or qualitative-led distinct. Donc, Piaget was at the right picture, and Vygosky at the left picture in a sense. And I agree with Piaget. That's step by step the stage. The next, my dear, this is just an example, the contrast between Piaget and Vygosky, the Russian guy. Sociocultural context is have minor effects for Piaget, and that's very important for Vygosky. Piaget is very centered on cognitive, and Vygosky on social aspect. I agree with both. Stage strong emphasis of Piaget, but not Vygosky, and so on. And the role of language, Piaget said this is a minimal effect on the development. That's contrary to Vygosky. So, I write in the bottom, the better interpret the result of study on young children is it is relevant to refer to various theory of development. That's not easy. Perhaps if you're in contact with developmental psychologists, will be helped to read your results sometime. It depends the age of the children, for sure. For the next one is, okay, it's just it's a funny example. I just want to contrast visually what's Q method and not. So the next one show you a strictly quantitative approach. I compare that to a puzzle. Each piece of a puzzle is organized to reproduce the model present by the creator or researcher. It's a more restrictive approach, less creative than the next one. I compared that to a patchwork. There's all the variable, but everyone create his own patchwork. It's quite different. They have more Q method. There's a more inductive orientation, but more creativity. That's what I liked in the Q method. You're not able to find two patchwork with the same structure. You understand what I try to see? That's funny example. The next one is preliminary consideration using Q method. I put in red the idea I want to bring. Children's ability to understand emotion is an important predictor of development of social competence. Emotion is central to the development. We don't deny that for sure. Taking the child perspective into account, researchers need to employ flexible method. That's what I like with the Q method. We adapt. Now we use visual stimuli. It's complex issue, but there's more flexibility than any other method. Researchers need to adapt user-friendly approach. For sure, with children, you need to support the best you can as researcher, the children. Is sensitive, Q method is considered a sensitive way of gathering data from children. It's much more easy. I gave a questionnaire to the children of 5 years old to respond on the scale, but I can do it with the Q method. There's a tendency to view children and their experience from adult point of view. All the research on developmental psychology is based on observation, as I do 30, 40 years ago, or questionnaire, but not the child, it's himself. Statement and the Q study are often written statement, but may also very well to use visual as such an image or object. Something was clear for the children. Finally, study with children were fundamental since the emphasis on emergence of subjectivity. I never discussed with Mike or Stephen about this aspect. Emergence, you know what I mean, emergence? Oh, the beginning of the construct of the cognitive aspect of the preference is, for me, is central. Perhaps we'll eventually develop a theory that's are different than what Piaget bring in the past. All the model is construct. However, we must refer to theory related cognitive and social development. We do our possible for sure, but I was very influenced by the text of John Montgomery and Ali Burton, published in 2015. I find a very interesting text. There's two, I was prisoner of this model. To the left, during 80s, 90s, I work in this context. And now since 10 to 12 years, I work on the left side. One is objective criteria, quantitative, Jack Block. This is nice, Jack and Jane Block. He's died many years ago, but he influenced me when I started to be interested by the QSER technique. But I don't realize at this period that I'll meet other nice people. That was like Mike and Stevens and many others. And Everett Waters, who developed the attachment QSER. I know Waters worked a little bit with Jack Block in the past in California. And I know very much Everett Waters, a very kind guy, but he worked in a quantitative approach with the QSER. I agree partially with him. And at the right side, Stephen Brown for sure was an important person for me since the first time I met him, I remember at Amsterdam. And James Good, I like very much this guy. I can add Mike in the photo for sure, but James Good, I remember in Amsterdam, a discussion all the night with the daughter of Stevenson was there at the table, and many other was, I will remember all my life this evening. I don't remember if the meal was good, but I remember that the wine was not bad. So is it controversy or complementarity between these two wings of the Q method? I don't know, I'm not able to respond, but I use both approach. And perhaps I have a problem of personality, I don't know, we will see. Yes, Miku? That's the contrast between Bloch and Stevenson. If you disagree with me, don't hesitate to. For Bloch is much more a model of on construct of personality, and he used the Q-sort as an observational tools, and much more interesting on intervariable correlation compared to Stevenson. And the metaphor is the puzzle. Most of the study in developmental psychology use Q-sort is in this model. And Stevenson was contrary. I mean, this is, conceptually is not the same world. Subjectivity, Q-sort, measured mental representation. I don't know if Stevenson discussed with Jack Bloch in the past, but and classification on interperson. When I discover the option to use interperson, correlate individual with another person and so on, and use a factor analysis, I said, I don't go to, I'm not trained in the good university because I don't know that. So the patchwork. Yes, my dear. I want to illustrate with personal experience with children. In general, the project usually involved in this, in the view of Jack Bloch and so on. Adults were usually, so adult teacher, parents describe the children. Like the example of mother-child attachment, Waters developed, this is a good contribution. This Q-sort is 90 statements and distributed in 9 categories. Children are not able to complete that. Even parents tried a couple of times, this was difficult. And a group of experts, you see what's the, develop an ideal profile of secure and dependent child from the fill-out questionnaire. So over 10 experts complete the Q set, but describe children was secure or dependent. And after I trained my student in this period to how to observe with this Q set. They fill out the Q set after they leave the home, the family where they observe during at home. And so the next one is just an example of what we do with that. I was involved in the publication of a German Posada from Purdue University. Was published in 10 years ago. And during a congress, we were at Virginia. 9 people from different countries agreed to work together. So we fill out the same Q-sort. So next one. So we published that, and That's one, how we use the criteria score, we were talking a couple minutes ago. The score of expert for the 90 items. And after we correlate each dyad that we observe with this criteria. So next. So as the result of this collaboration across the world gave an idea of the mean score of the security are very variable across the culture. For sure, the Portugal is the highest score. So the children from this study, the children from Portugal are much more secure than any other country. Italy, USA is not bad, 44. That's the correlation between this criteria score and the American, that's why you evaluate. Italy is not bad, France is not bad, Canada start with, Japan was the lowest score. So globally, the study suggests to take into account the sociocultural context in the evaluation of the security of attachment. And security of attachment is determinant in the development of the children. Thousands of study and quantitative study demonstrate that. And myself, sometimes I'm not sure myself, I'm sicker. I was sicker enough. Not today, but yesterday, yes. Next slide, please. And if I use the material of Jack Gluck, I just gave you an idea of how we use it. Next, you know better than me, 91 statement and so on. And next, that's quite interesting. This is just a single study, just one, a student that followed my course, master course many years ago. She was an undergraduate student. She made a short story. She came after the course and asked me, did you have a tool to evaluate the child rearing practice, the value? I said, I opened my desk and said, I see some card. I would say 10 or 12 kit of card of the block tool. So I said, give me it, I will see you next week. Look what she's doing. She filled out herself. She asked to her husband, she asked to her mother, the mother of the father, and so on, and so on, and so on. So when she came back the week after, I go in the lab. It was near midnight. Enter the data and see the highest correlation and some of the lowest. I said to her, that's quite interesting. Nobody do that. I have an image of the intergenerational effect, the parental value about the rearing, the child rearing. I was fascinated by this work. We're not published because she just have to pick up this data, but I keep it as a nice souvenir. Next, please. General comment. I go fast because the time is go too fast. Quantitative approach makes it possible to assess child, but only from the perception of adult. That's a great limit. Often referred to a standard criteria score. I disagree with that, even if I use it. Often require training to use Q-sort. Does not provide much information about each individual, except the student I said before. Not always nuance as a result. not as a Q method we use. However, sometimes help to highlight the perception of a member of social network, like the student realized in the preceding example. Yes, me too. Now I will finish on the complementarity, the Q method we're familiar with. Next. Visual stimuli have some common relate to children's study on perception of a sample of participants discover the preference on the school adoption. I decided to be interested in adoption because I have a good neighbor a couple of years ago who adopted 2 young Chinese, and it was nice. Today, this is not babies, young woman, but it gave me, said, why I can have photo of children, why don't you use to study adoption? So verify the contribution of the result related to representation of aesthetic or photogenic criteria, facial beauty or attractiveness. You see after so the cursor I developed is 34 pictures of children of 4 or 5 years old, appears observed in daycare center that I was talking before, with the parental consent for sure. The student have to choose children they would like to adopt. That's a master course I gave, and I asked to fill out my cursor. 2 weeks later, some students complete the cursor again, but in diegetic context. I said to them, but my neighbor, when they adopt this Chinese girl, it's not just the father or the mother. There was in a context of diegetic choice. That started to be interest me. Another sample also complete the cursor to rate the most photogenic children, the most beautiful, attractive children. So next, that's my 34th picture of children that I was observed. Half a boy, half girl. Next. And then distribute in this cursor, 1 picture, 2 pictures, 7 pictures. So is perhaps very constrained, but perhaps I would change my distribution, but now I can live with that. Next. So the sample, we evaluate the facial attractiveness. Look like this. There's 3 children at the very high, 2 boys and the girls, and at the left, 2 boys and the girls too. So next. So the total sample for adoption is about the same, some minor difference. But what I like with photo is you can see sometimes some tenses is facile to contrast, but all very attractive children has been selected for adoption. Next. So after I go not in detail, but it's just I guess in the factor 1, in majority, only on the factor 1, only 31% of the picture was selected by aesthetic criteria. The next factor, 65 was attractive, physical attractive of the children. There was influence on their cursor. And it's the same, the next one, 63, that's the same. But you see the children I put in a square photo where when they are associated with aesthetic selection. I was playing when I looked at that. Next, I came back to my patchwork. And this is, I don't know how you react to this image. I look two individuals, A and B, and they fill out the cue sort in dyad context. And after I just see, for many dyad, just see the correlation between each one with the dyadic, and to see one are much more influence on the dyadic preference. What's that mean? I put a question of leadership, or what's the process to complete a cue sort in dyadic or perhaps triadic context? As every day you do that. How does mental perception adjust to the value of social environment? I'm quite interested by this aspect of the transformation or the evolution of the cue sort, individual cue sort to dyadic cue sort. I never see in the art, in the publication, something on the cue method related to this issue. Perhaps I'm fool, I can admit that. Next, please. I see, so I look for this dyad. You see what's the link between each evaluation and a dyad evaluation, which photo are moving a lot, or there's a disagreement, or so and so on, for both negative and positive choice. Just to show you how I work. Next. Discussion in general, the coherence across different samples was very good. Gender difference on children have minor influence on this result. The reference of external criteria as aesthetic was an unusual way to study the influence of facial attractiveness, for sure. But there's some confusion and ambiguity. Compared to item with sentence, child picture elicit, from my point of view, more emotional and affective response for the respondent. I refer to Connor in 2006. To some extent, the mental representation of these pictures seem to translate a phenomenological response. But I can admit that my distribution of the 34 pictures have a restrict constraint on the result, but it's fun. Next. So from this work, I published a chapter in Brazil a couple of years ago with 2 students that was involved in their training, and my dear colleague and friend Claire Gauzant, you know her. She worked lots on the cue method. I was very happy with this publication. And I like this photo of children. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Next. Visual attractiveness and adoption. Oh, yes, there's a problem with my, it was an article of Chin. I read it because I find it interesting. Report that parents take more safety precaution with attractive children. The more attractive infant receive more kissing, smiling, eyes contact, and cuddling from their parents than do less attractive infant. It's terrible. They conclude that attractiveness will be a stronger predictor of adaptability. For sure, babies perceived as having the largest eyes would also be rated as more attractive and more adaptable. So probably Stevenson will agree with the idea that the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Less attention was given to subjective assessments of facial beauty and aesthetic. It was funny. Next, please. Some comment. Picture is worth 1,000 words. That's the danger. People possess different standard of beauty, and not everyone agree on who is beautiful or who is not. Beauty is the heart of the beholder. Beauty lies in the lover's eyes or attachment. Conceptually, this work suggests to give more attention to the influence of affective component in cue methodology. That's my point of view. Next, project development with young children. Okay, I go very fast because the time go too fast. Next one. Okay, I just show you photos. I start to initiate a project with the same photo I'm talking about, but filled out by a young children of 4 or 5 years old. And it's working. I said, but I mean, time is going on and I have to go to the neighborhood to try to convince children to fill out my questionnaire, my Q-sort. Next one is again, we use fruit with the same children. We use fruit and vegetable, and you put in the basket what's his preference. It's quite easy because it's visual. The children are able to do it, the task for sure. I'm convinced of that. So next, I mean, it's a general comment. Humanology is relevant both scientifically and practically. In summary, studying mental process associated with priorities at the origin of individual preference or subjectivity. You see, I'm stuck on that. Study of emotion and behavior is often the parents or staff in daycare center or school who supply the data for completing questionnaire. That's a comment. Angelo is expert. As many said, children at 4 or 5 years old, I just see on the photo, are the expert of their choice, of their preference. Nobody else can respond to it for him. It would be more optimal to value the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinarity approach. I don't know if a colleague of the Q method work in this perspective. I was involved in different projects to help colleagues in the last 10 years in different domain. That's nothing to do with children. Anyway, and I learned lots. Can contribute to practice and research. As Mike said in the beginning, that's why people in the field, when I talk to them about the Q-sort, the Q method, they have great interest, much more than as if I speak of a questionnaire. Development is construct from exchange with other. I'm bothered with the question of culture. Vygosky point of view, I show you. This paradigm suggests that social conditions are the products of a relationship with the other. That's the question. It's over, je pense. Here's the next one. Okay, socio-constructivist. Okay, the notion of dyad, the notion of intersubjectivity, is present in many publications, the notion of intersubjectivity. I'm confronted with that, with the Q method. Or should the next Congress should find a moment to discuss of that. The analysis of degree of convergence of the preference of parent and child would be relevant to study. That's, dyad, but also parents compared to children. They have the same preference. Example, nutrition. I have a colleague in Montreal, a specialist in nutrition. When I talk about the Q method, she said she worked on obesity of children and said, she said, Marcel, we don't know if what's the influence of the parents on the children about his obesity. Is it? Yeah, I said, but yeah, but Q method don't give you a response to that. It depends from family to the other one, which perhaps will have a lot of diversity. What I like of the Q method is less normative. I work 25 years on normative network construct, but Q method is much more open to discussion. I guess it's over. Isn't it? Yeah.
I was going to suggest, yeah, because we only have 10 minutes left, maybe we can
Yeah.
save your second PowerPoint.